Hey, Iko here from Touch. So excited to start our third Tech Touch 2020. And our first session here is with Itay Zetelny from Ernst & So Itay is a partner at Ernst & Young Israel and has a wide experience in cooperation between startups and cooperations. And Itay, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much. So pleasure to be with you today. My name is Itay Zetelny, and I'm leading the innovation practice and also department that assists startups raise funds from different investors. I'll talk about open innovation. I'll give you the story through the we gained in Israel in the last couple of years, and then try to be relevant for entrepreneurs from your region. And of course, please ask me whatever questions you want. I'll have time to answer after the session. So just to give you the picture that we see here in Israel. So Israel, as you probably know, is one of the leading ecosystems around the world. And in this respect, leader in VC investments. We have more than 1,000 new startups every year for many, many years. I'm here for 20 years in this sector, and it's going on for many years and keep on going even now. Now, if you look at the main strength, so if you want to understand what is an ecosystem or how an ecosystem works or why it is so flourishing, it's a combination of a lot of forces and a lot of assets that comes from different places. In our specific ecosystem, we have an interesting mix of talent, people with the relevant education, also the willingness to take risk, which means to be an entrepreneur, anyway, from our case. And during the years around this specific capability, a lot of things happened, mainly in the financial part. So different assets coming from a lot of venture capitals, incubators, accelerators, and different platforms that assist entrepreneurs grow and fund their company. And also what happened in the last couple of years, and this is the subject of the discussion, there is a lot of participation of multinational companies, which this is what we are going to focus on. So just to give you the idea how it works, there is a communication, an ongoing communication between entrepreneurs that want to launch a new company and looking for needs. They look for global needs, nothing to do with the local market in Israel. They always look globally from day one. Also, all the companies are global in terms of the language, the access to the markets, the understanding their clients. The clients are outside of Israel. And they talk with two entities since day one. First of all, the investors. They want to see what investors want to fund, and they get feedbacks from investors, and they work with investors, and of course, later on, they get funds from the investors, but also with the multinational companies. Now, how come it happens, this multinational companies direct communication? So just to give you another element in the ecosystem, in Israel, we have more than 400 multinational companies with R&D centers. Recent numbers is close to 500 companies that are doing different things in the ecosystem. Of course, R&D, also investments, scouting, I'll show you in a minute. And this is something that happened here during the years, but it grew a lot in the last couple of years. And this is something that is also relevant for your ecosystem and your market and in general globally. So why is it like that? So if we look at the history of the high tech in Israel, it is leaning on the technology sector. So technology companies, high tech companies, they always base their model on, of course, internal R&D, but also a lot of M&As. A lot of M&As, and this is something that started in the 90s. Large corporates, the first was IBM, Microsoft, companies like that, and Intel, but later on, many newcomers, technology companies that they wanted to grow and just acquired Israeli companies. So it's IP, technology, and also talent. Just to give you the idea, today half of the high tech is owned by multinational companies. We call this group of companies Wave 1. wave one of companies, of multinational companies that base their model on acquisition. But this is not new. What is new is practically wave two. Okay, so what is currently happening around the world, it's a phenomenon that started around 5 years ago and now it's very, very dominant, is that we are all going through a disruption. Now, if we go through a disruption, which is practically the technology changes the world, all the companies, of course, in different stages, and all the sectors are going through disruption. So eventually, even if you're a food company, automotive company, medical company, you understand that if you will not expose yourself to a lot of innovation from outside, it will be very difficult for you to sustain your leadership. So what we see in the last 5 years, it's a lot of newcomers, which is practically companies from all the sectors. So we have large banks with the activities on the ground. I'll show you in a minute what kind of activities as well. And you have automotive manufacturers and tier one companies. Just to give you the idea, 4 or 5 years ago, nobody in Israel did anything about automotives. Okay, we didn't have any manufacturing capabilities. No large companies was working in the Israeli market, but because of the digitization and the technology needs and the new business models, those companies, they are seeking for innovation and therefore they need to find it somewhere. Okay, so this is the opportunity, we call it open innovation. So we even see companies from food, from CPG, of course, pharma companies that never did software, AI, analytics in the same manner that they do today. A lot of changes in all the healthcare delivery processes with the patient journeys that are different, etc. And this is it is a very strong phenomena that happens everywhere. Now, what are those multinational companies looking for? Why are they doing open innovation? First of all, they understand that things are moving fast, and they understand that they can no longer develop everything internally. So they are looking for the next big thing. They look for things that they don't know how to do. So if they don't have a lot of software capabilities or analytics or sensing or whatever, they need to look for it from outside. They want to reduce, of course, the threat. There is a lot of collaboration between multinational companies and startups just because they want to change their culture. They want to expose themselves. They also need talent. And of course, they want to collaborate also with new players because they understand that their markets are moving and they need to do things differently. And therefore, we see a lot of collaboration within large companies that never worked together. Now they collaborate in order to deliver something. By the way, this COVID situation, this pandemic, we see very, very interesting collaborations and the movement around, of course, healthcare and also around education and other sectors that all very interesting, the way that people act and change and the companies are acting. And of course, they have all their internal needs, more efficiency, they need the sustainability. And so that's, of course, all the improvements that they need internally. And open innovation is a kind of an element that assists them. So they want, they are looking for high quality startups and ideas. So it starts from the academia and can grow to large technology companies and startups. So it's not only early stage. And they want to keep resources low, so they don't want to start investing in startups early, and they want low pressure on their internal resources. So it's very difficult for them to collaborate with startups. Although they want to do that, it's really challenging. And of course, they want to see business outcome short term. So what do they do? So first of all, they change the models. So if we look at the 90s and 2000s, which is the high-tech growth, most of the models were based on, as I mentioned, M&A and of course scouting. Scouting is looking for technologies. All the companies are doing that. Wave one and wave two are doing scouting. But in order to be effective with scouting, you need to start working with the startups. So what we've seen in the past was more incubation, which working with startups in order to own part of it and make sure that you can adopt the technology. Today, what we see today is what we call it Activate or Israel 4.0. The model is a much more flexible open innovation model that includes creation of acceleration. Many of the companies, they have open innovation arms, which is, again, if you look to approach one of the companies, global companies look at their innovation activities, it's very, very open. They have different events. They do an ecosystem engagement plans in order to attract the relevant companies. There is a lot of information there regarding their wish lists of technologies, what they are looking for, what are their capabilities. Do they have a corporate VC, so they also invest, or they just approach the companies in order to collaborate? What are the programs? You can even find the people, the team from and find who is doing what from the corporate. So it's very, very open and active. So it's easy for entrepreneurs to approach. And also there is another interesting thing that happens around those multinational companies. It's also relevant for investors, and it's very relevant for startups. And it is the ecosystem. So within each subsector, I wrote few like agri-tech, food tech, retail tech, auto tech, fintech, and of course others. And of course, based on the maturity of this sector, you'll find ecosystems. It's not something local. It's not in Israel or in Europe. It's global. It happens everywhere. Of course, based on the number of investments and activities in the region. So just to give you the idea, in Israel, fintech, 3 years ago, we didn't have any startup dealing with fintech. Look what happened now with fintech. And also agri-tech. And of course, in each one of the other subsectors. And just to give you the idea, Internet of Things, industrial sector. So this is only in Israel, just I'm presenting that just to give you the idea how it works. So an ecosystem, as I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it's based on VC, venture capitals and investors that are focusing on this specific topic. It is also startups that are looking for investments and also looking for collaboration and for product market fit. And of course, multinational companies, large companies in this sector. In this case, it's industrial IoT. So it's all the technologies for the manufacturing. If you look at the agri-tech that I presented the previous slide, you can see now you can find large companies like Monsanto or other companies that are doing scouting and working in the ecosystem. And for you as an entrepreneur, it's very, very effective to involve yourself if you're focused on a specific sector. So if I'm continuing and looking from your point of view, what the startup can leverage from the open innovation activity that is done by the large multinational companies. So first of all, you need to expose yourself to this phenomena, and it is a growing phenomena because of the disruption of the world. First, the thing that we usually see and assist the companies from day one is to make sure that they have a strong product market fit. Your solution must fit the needs of the market. Many of the inputs are being delivered by the corporates, and they are open to talk with good companies. They are looking for good companies, and approaching them, it's a good idea if you really want to understand better understand the challenges, the opportunities, and what they are doing, what others. You can also find executives from those corporates and also people that used to work for the leading corporates and left and involve themselves in the innovation ecosystem. So this is the first thing. Then, of course, there is the funding. So funding I didn't include everything in this slide. Of course, there is the corporate VC, the funding arm of the corporate. Usually it focuses on specific size of companies. Not all the corporates are investing early stage, so it's not always relevant. And also they don't do, it's not like a VC, they don't do many investments every year, but they are very strategic. So you can talk with these people, and they have a lot of understanding what the corporate is looking for, and they can guide you. And usually they are very open for the discussion. Of course, there is funding that they can go first for NRE. So if they need something and they are willing to pay in order to tailor something for their needs, and of course there are the proof of concept, the POCs that are often paid, and this is part of their ecosystem engagement plans that you can learn via the internet or from people that work with the corporate. And then the second thing is and then back to the previous slide that I mentioned regarding the communication with these large corporates. So large corporates, they have a lot of support in acceleration and incubation, in advisory. They have facilities, they are collaborating, and they have a lot of events. So in general, I would say that each one of the corporates that operate an open innovation activity and looking for startups and technologies from outside, they have their own platform. Now, of course, there is a significant difference between each company, and also significant difference in the platforms that they own. So not all of them have a CVC, not all of them do acceleration. There are companies that are very focused. There are companies that do a program, so they publish a program, and based on that, they screen the market and the ecosystem. And there are companies that are very open for collaboration. There are companies that are not so open for collaboration. And all of them are participating in events. And you can find in the specific sector ecosystem, you can find many events, many communication that happens today online, but in general also physically. I think that the online opportunity kind of opened the companies. It became easier to communicate with large corporates, even if you're not sitting in an innovation ecosystem like Israel or the Valley or places like that. You can do it from distance, which is a little bit easier. Regarding facilities, again, this varies from one place to another. There are different facilities. I don't think this is the important thing. The facilities is not the important thing. The important thing is the really collaboration and the inputs that you can get from them. And of course, creation of collaboration really assist the company get funds and raise funds and grow their company. So that's, I think, another thing that is really crucial for the collaboration that you can have with those kind of companies. So I think if I'm trying to kind of conclude the open innovation activity, note that it is a growing phenomena, and it's not something that going to stop because of the digitization. I think even the COVID gave it another push. Even the oil and gas sectors or agriculture, more heavy moving sectors, they are also opening themselves to innovation and technologies, putting the user in the center, communicating with him directly, using the data in order to analyze it, doing a lot of AI and machine learning. And there is, and I think that to sum up the discussion, there is a very big gap between the availability of technology and where technology is currently, in terms of maturity, which is a lot of technology very mature compared to what was integrated or implemented by the real world. So if you look at the, hospitals, education, large corporates, you see that they are only starting to move and to digitize themselves, and therefore there is a huge opportunity to assist the companies bridge the gap and to connect to those companies and try to leverage their needs in order to grow your company. Again, get the product market fit, create value to the company, and of course, maybe use them as a future client and future investor. So by that, I'm finishing my presentation. I want to thank you very much, and I hope that you'll be very successful in growing your companies as entrepreneurs. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you a lot, Itay, for the great presentation. It's very important to hear your advice in terms of collaboration between startups and corporations, and also about innovating in the big companies, and not only big companies, but I mean in conventional business. While we are waiting for questions from the audience, of ones which we have on our site from Touch Team. So you mentioned in the presentation about the corporate accelerators and corporate VCs. While corporate VCs are, of course, a huge machine of scouting for solutions, and it works everywhere quite successfully. But I have heard from some of the corporate acceleration organizers that it doesn't really work out in the end. That for some reason, some of the solutions that kind of win the corporate acceleration program are then dead or kind of half acquired by the corporate, but not finished, not implemented properly, or sometimes they just fail to actually deliver the solution as it was promised during the program. So maybe this is just the reason that is connected to some particular economies or countries or something like that. Or maybe this is already the tendency and we should actually go and look for another solution. Or maybe you have other ideas on this matter.
No, I think your point is important. Look, what happens is the following. First of all, just to kind of organize thoughts. So corporate VCs, it's an investment arm of the corporate. They usually very conservative compared to VCs or angels that are investing in the ecosystem. So they do a lot of scouting, but they don't do a lot of investments usually, and they are looking for investments that are more strategic for them. So in terms of the ability to raise money from corporate VCs, it's really in more matured stages, and it's a small portion of the total available money for investments. So I would say that when you grow a company, first of all, of course, you have these friends and family and angels and government money usually that you use at early stages, and then you move to VCs, and only then you move to CVCs, to corporate VCs. So just to give the picture. Regarding the open innovation platform, and as you mentioned, accelerators and different activities, or I call it in general program, because each company has something else. So it can be a competition like you mentioned, or just an ongoing call for proposals. There is a big difference between the companies. Okay, there are companies that already have a very effective processes. Not most of the companies, by the way, most of them do not have it yet, but part of them do have a very organized acceleration and implementation models that they screen the companies, and they know to tell you in advance if you do the POC in the right way, and they can even often finance part of it, which is not a lot of money, but it's also something. But if you go through the challenge, they already connect you from day one with the people from their corporate that are looking for this solution, and they are also involved in the POC. So if the POC works, you already know the relevant people from the corporate, and you have more, higher probability to move from POC to, let's say, a later stage of implementation. And again, the journey is long until you sell and adopt the product, as long as you're not a finalized product for procurement, because we are not talking about procurement, we are talking about open innovation. Having said that, many of the companies that do not have that, so they have let's say, a very, if you look from outside, it looks like a strong arm that does open innovation, but behind that, it doesn't mean that they are really organized internally. And this is something that you can evaluate in advance. If they are not organized internally and they are just doing competitions, or it's more either a cultural or PR thing, just to expose themselves to the innovation, and that means that eventually it will be very difficult for them to really implement the technology and adopt it. So just be aware that you need to evaluate if it's a real, if this company and this process is real or not, or for later on implementation.
I see. Thank you for the advice. Also, we have another question from the audience. What advice could you give to startups in terms of working with corporate VCs?
I think corporate VCs,
I mean, that's
I think that it's
yes,
a
please.
good question. Usually, from what we see, and we work with a lot of corporate VCs, the people that are sitting there are, let's say, very experienced people. So they come, they don't just come from the corporate, they come also from the VC world. So they know how to invest, how to evaluate companies, how to ask the right questions. And the good corporate VCs, they are also very connected to their organization. So they know how to bring people from the organization that will evaluate the company before they invest and make sure it's something strategic for them. So I think that it's a very, very good collaboration, but it's not very easy. You should work, you should really understand the corporate and collaborate and make sure that you have very, very good communication with the corporate VC team and also with the people from the corporate itself that evaluate in parallel. And I think that it's a very good opportunity to work with them, but it's not easy because they don't do so many investments like regular VCs. But they are, if you look at the numbers, they are the rising force in the last 2 years, and they are becoming more and more dominant because of the disruption, and because of the need to connect the corporate to innovation. So, for example, if you have a technology that is relevant for the agri-tech, for example, of course, look for the corporate innovation, the corporate VC people from the large corporates, and start talking with them because they see the picture. They know where the corporates are heading, what are their needs, what kind of technologies they are looking for. It will really assist you develop the company and do the product market fit and develop your product. So that's another thing.
Okay, thank you. And I think the last question would be, and then we will need to move to the next speaker in the program. You mentioned that it's always good to approach innovation managers or departments in the companies if you'd like to offer your project or startup or whatever. But as I have mentioned when we firstly talked, in Touch, we work with corporates, and also SMEs who are not even digitized properly, not talking even about like higher innovations, like more up-to-date innovations. And the thing is that they don't have innovation managers, they don't think about it at all. And of course, as we are building the innovative ecosystem, we need to involve these people, the business owners of these companies somehow. Would you give us any advice on how we can encourage business owners to actually open the doors for innovation into their companies? Like how we can basically move this all further?
I think it's a very good question, by the way. By the way, we have the same challenge in Israel. I'll tell you why. In Israel, there is the innovation ecosystem, which is startups that are looking globally. And the companies that I mentioned, it's multinational companies, very big companies from all over the world that are coming to the ecosystem. It doesn't mean that it includes the Israeli large industrial or whatever companies. But the way that it opens is the following. First of all, I think that more and more local corporates exposed to the global trends and threats also, because they see more and more threats from competition from outside, and they understand that they will not be immune from import, and they see that the young generation is going online, and that's something that is clear to them. So the way that we usually do that, we make sure that we have the right benchmarking and understanding the disruption in their own sector. So, for example, if it's a big industrial company, there is a lot of digitalization, industrial IoT. There are many opportunities that are low-hanging fruit, and with that, you can start doing deeper communication regarding what you can do as a corporate in order to move the needle. And also, the second thing is start small. I mean, don't come with huge projects to these people because they are not used to taking risks. So we learned that when you start with a successful smaller project, even if it's less innovative or less disruptive than what you would like to do overall to this company, it creates confidence, it creates relations, and it opens the door to a larger communication. So it's a baby steps, and don't forget that innovation in general, it's a journey. It's not a one-time visit, knocking on the door and selling your product. It's a journey that starts maybe now in your country, but for sure it starts, and all the companies will need to go through it, right? So it's not a question just when, it's not whether, okay? Okay.
Okay. Thank you for encouragement and advice. That's really valuable for us. I think we are out of time and questions, though I would really like to continue our conversation. So I hope we will stay in touch. Thank you for joining us. And next, after a 2-minute break, we will move to IQ Syed that will be talking about micromobility. See you all, and thank you again, Itay. Bye.
Welcome. Bye.